small village near Pakistan's capital city, Islamabad. Today may well be a day when some of its villagers heave a sigh of relief. The knock on their door could be opportunity knocking. It comes in the name of Saida, the driving force behind a non-government organization called Sahara, which means support, and that's what it's all about. Sahara supports young and destitute women who are victims of violence and circumstances. The help it provides is in the form of training and cash, which supports the education of children in generally large families.
मेरे लाते कि मैं बहुत गरीब हाँ, मेरे छोटे छोटे बच्चे ते मैं कराले मैंने करू कर छोड़ा, मैं माँ बाप के कारण ते आप खुद मजदूरी करनी है। उन्हें जो फ़र्क है कि चलो मतलब थोड़ा ज़्यादा गैर चली जाना, कम गुजारा हो जाना, इतने मतलब मजबूर ना होने, थोड़े बहुते मजबूर होने आ, किसी वक्त नहीं होने तो इन्हें थोड़ा ज़्यादा सहारा होना कि पैसे मिली जाने।
Saida, in reality, is 5,000 miles away from her hometown in Dewsbury in West Yorkshire. Saida is the new breed of fast-emerging, confident Asian women who are driving in the fast lane, no longer content with just sitting at home and tending to mundane chores. A lawyer by profession, Saida is a passionate activist for victimized women and is all set to make a difference in the lives of people in her community.
It's a very mixed generation, and recently I wrote a column in which I describe us as a generation whose parents think they're too English and whose children think they're too Asian. It's a generation who speaks in English but still thinks in Urdu. And it's a generation which, you know, in terms of local community and the rag trade and the kind of businesses that we've had here, I draw these comparisons and I say we're a generation that's moved from rag mills to ragga music, you know, and we seem to have kind of encompassed everything in between. And we're a generation who have, for example, in my father's generation, they were driving buses and they were conductors on the buses, and we're a generation who've moved from buses to BMWs, you know, we're a generation that have moved from outside toilets to en suites now, you know, we have this kind of amazing journey that we have been through.
Asian families in general are male-dominated. Marriages are arranged and sons are often given priority and preference over daughters. Saida is an exception. She comes from a large family dominated by women where both parents played a key role in the development of their children.
My mum and dad are very interesting characters. My mum is a very strong woman. She likes to believe that she's not, but she is. She's very focused on what she wanted. I come from a family of 5 girls, and she came from a culture and a society where, you know, it was very difficult for women to come from all female families, and she felt it was important for her to give us a good education. She basically said that you know, you don't have any brothers and me and your dad aren't going to be around forever. She kind of thought about it in Pakistani terms, and therefore there may not be a man around to look after you, and therefore you're going to have to fend for yourselves.
Asian mothers are often underestimated and undermined in the role they play in deciding their children's future. In Saida's family, no one disputes the guiding light in the clan.
My mother had it all worked out, actually. I wanted to be wanted to work backstage in theatre, and Mum just said, "You must be joking." She goes, "You can either be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, and you can take your pick." So I went into law.
It is a major role played by my wife. It was her who inspired to the daughter to get educated, because I was, as a man, I was very frightened to send my daughter into school and colleges and university because environment was not right.
थोड़ा सा ये भी मेरे ज़हन में था कि अगर अल्लाह पाक ने बेटे नहीं दिए तो अल्लाह ताला मेरी बेटियों को इतना कुछ दे कि मैं जो है वो फील ही ना करूं कि मेरे पास बेटा नहीं है। तो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह मुझे अल्लाह पाक ने वो सब कुछ दिया है।
Saida has no qualms about an arranged marriage to a cousin from Pakistan. She has a happy and stable home where Muslim values are held in the highest esteem, but not without proper understanding of their relevance to daily living.
You know, there is a more understanding of Islam in the younger generation than there was in the older generation. Certainly my generation's understanding of Islam is based more upon our own reading and real knowledge rather than just what the Maulana at the local masjid has told us, which was more like the understanding that my father's generation had. You know, they kind of followed an Islam which their parents had taught them, maybe not from an educated point of view, but they said you have to do this because the Maulana Sahib says you have to, you know. But now people of my generation are saying, well, why? And what's the Quranic and the Hadith reference for that? So I feel that my generation's understanding of Islam is much more rounded than the generation before us.
For Saida's little girl, it's still the routine that her mother inherited from her family. During the day, it's the best of traditional English schooling, and in the afternoon, it's a different scenario altogether.
Of course I am. She was going to madrasa. She should be dressed appropriately for madrasa. When she goes to school, she goes in her school skirt and her blazer, and that's appropriately dressed for her school. When she goes out to play with her friends, she's in her jeans and her t-shirt, and that's appropriate attire for play. You see, Islam preaches moderation, you know, and that is such a lovely way of life. You know, do everything, do it in moderation, and adopt your circumstances to where you are.
Despite what Saida has to say, the number of young people dressing up in the conventional Islamic way seems to be increasing.
I think it's an identity thing. I think people now realise that that is part and parcel of Islam, and you know, feel that that is what they want to do because that is what Islam says that they must do. There's also an issue in relation to identity because by wearing the hijab they are clearly and visibly Muslim, and people are saying, well, young people are saying, well, we want to be seen as Muslim. You know, we are proud of our identity and we are going to show that by wearing the hijab, and men are adopting an Islamic dress code, and that is their choice. And the wonderful thing about living in Britain is that it gives us that choice.
At the end of the day, it is the values that parents pass on to their children that are crucial for successful marriages and stable homes. But sadly, society in general has allowed values to drift and ugliness to creep in.
Yeah, domestic violence is a big issue because traditionally it's from the communities that we come from, it's been not frowned upon in the same way that certainly in British society it is. But let's not forget that domestic violence takes place in every society. The additional problem that we have in the Asian community is that when violence takes place, there is a tremendous amount of pressure on the woman from the extended family and the community not to publicise that violence. And unfortunately, the support services in this country are not geared up to be able to give that woman the necessary support.
Differentiate between culture and religion because
Not far from Dewsbury in Bradford, another woman working to help change attitudes is Salma. She runs a support and counseling group for young people from all ethnic minorities to help them explore issues that relate to marriage and its consequences. Salma hopes that this frank and open exchange breaks down barriers and help parents and children to understand each other better and come closer together. But she does agree that arranged marriages simply can't be blamed for all the evils in society.
It's well acknowledged that South Asian marriages still even today are perhaps far more successful than perhaps marriages in Europe or the West, and the statistics show that 1 in 3 marriages is doomed to fail. But it might, I don't think it's as simple or as black and white as Eastern marriages are better than Western marriages. Lots of Eastern marriages work very well, and they are arranged. There is a difference between arranged marriages and forced marriages. I think in arranged marriages, if they're done properly, there's some real positives. families support the couple from the beginning. They may even support them to set up home. And there's external ties which are almost a supportive bed for the couple, really, and which would prevent some normal everyday stresses in a marriage coming to the fore, because there's lots of people to hold that marriage together and contain some of the issues. But also at the same time, what we have to recognise is that some people perhaps adhere more closely to it being a forced marriage, so that young people aren't given a choice. They're not entering into it in terms of them having a choice and wanting to enter into that marriage. In fact, them having absolutely no choice, no rights, and being told exactly what to do. And those are the marriages that are problematic. And that's not to say that many people don't continue to live in that forced marriage, because unfortunately and sadly, many women or men that have been that are in forced marriages would continue to live in those.
In close vicinity of Bradford is Keighley, where the first female magistrate and perhaps the youngest in the country is a role model for young Muslims in the UK. Shamim believes that the whole problem of bad marriages results from poor or no communication between parents and their children, which results in irrational behavior where choice is considered a defiance against family traditions.
I think mainly it would be that getting the daughter married off at a young age. I wouldn't advise any parent really to do that. If their daughter wants to actually study and wants to work, and they should allow her to do that. And at the same time, I would encourage the young girls to believe in themselves, but not forget that they are a Muslim, and that they have to fulfill their roles as a Muslim and respect their parents' wishes. So it's a balance, having a balance between your Eastern culture and your Western culture, and having a balance between your religion and your culture as well, and not abusing the two.
You're listening to Connections on 774 AM, BBC Radio Leeds.
A very good evening to you. You are listening to Connections here with Musard Dabasi on the frequency of 774 AM across West Yorkshire. You are listening to Musard Dabasi with you through till 7 o'clock.
From the studios in Bradford, Musarrat connects with the Asian community throughout Yorkshire. Musarrat has shared the highs and lows within the Asian community long enough to realize that it is parental attitudes that needs changing.
Parents now do have to look at how they are arranging their children's marriages, in terms of the traditional arranged marriage needs to maybe move on a little bit. I think maybe now parents need to make a compromise with their children as to how they are going to go about arranging a marriage for them. It's not going to be as it used to be many years ago, as like, we know so-and-so, and you'll have one meeting and you're going to get married. I think parents need now to be able to say to their children, we've seen this chap, we think he's going to be suitable, we'll introduce you to him, get to know him, see what you think. And I think that's easier to do if you are from the boys' side of the family. It's much more difficult to do if you're from the girl's side of the family, because there's always that, she's a girl and there's strange men looking at her, and, what are they going to be saying about her if they refuse her? It's always been the case that if a woman gets turned down, there must be something wrong with her. And if the woman turns somebody down, she must have somebody else in mind. So she's in a catch-22 situation.
The attitude of parents who made a living in the UK but continue to dream of returning back to their countries of origin has affected the younger generation. This uncertainty of where the real home is and the practice of sending money abroad at the expense of children here is causing deep resentment.
Children here are losing out because parents are more concerned with the families back home, and because of that, children have got lost. For me, I see a whole generation of Asian children that have lost their way, and I think they're quite bitter. I think they're angry. I think they're upset as to what's happened to them, and I think they are confused about their own identity. It is like living two lives, and you have to try and strike that balance. And if you don't strike that balance, it can be very difficult. You get a lot of peer pressure from people around you at school, and you want to try and fit in with everybody else. And if you don't, you're an outcast. So it's very difficult. And I see a breakdown in the extended family.
Despite the hard times that the first Asian parents went through and the way they struggled to make a success of their lives in a hostile foreign environment, Musarrat feels that it is high time the community moved on.
You know, I mean, I found that myself, because the first time I went to Pakistan was after 26 years. And everybody was saying, oh, make sure you've got your head covered up and you've got a shawl on and, you know, you don't reveal your body. And so I did. And I turned up at Islamabad airport, looked around and thought, what's going on here? Everybody's there with sleeveless dresses and short cropped hair, and me with a scarf untied round like my old granny, and completely different. You know, I was behaving the way my mum and dad thought people were still behaving, as they were when they left Pakistan 20 odd years ago. But Pakistan has moved on, and unfortunate parents here that came 50 years ago, they're still stuck there.
It's celebration time at Saida's, where a big family is a great comfort and support for all its members. But sadly, that is not the case within a lot of families, where children feel neglected and the generation gap gets increasingly wider.
It's all about hukuk Allah and hukuk al-abad, isn't it? It's all about, are you spending, enough time in the community and with your children and with your family, bringing them up in the right way? You may well be praying namaz 5 times, which all of us should. But at the same time, if you're also not doing what you should be doing in terms of your children and guiding them, then what is the point of those namaz?
As more and more young Muslims understand the true meaning of their faith, age-old taboos and misinterpretations will gradually fade away. More young people will join the ranks of Saida's appreciative husband in acknowledging the equality of both sexes that Islam lays down in its holy book, the Quran.
It depends how you take, what you want out of the religion. You can turn it around, but the religion doesn't say that. It doesn't stop women's their equal rights. To me, it's just a normal. I mean, if she wants to go and get a job, or she wants to start a business or anything like this, by all means, she's got rights to do that.
For Saida, it is a return to the ancestral village in Pakistan for a family reunion. But it's not all fun and games here. Thousands of miles away from Dewsbury, Saida has to face those who would say that with so much to do back in Yorkshire, what is she doing here in Pakistan? After all, charity does begin at home.
There's a tremendous amount of work to be done here, I accept that, but the work we do in Pakistan is very basic level support, which widows and divorcees don't have. We're talking about food, we're talking about shelter, we're talking about clean water, we're talking about basic education. yes, there are issues in Great Britain, but the issues in relation to widows and divorcees and the empowerment of women in Pakistan are much more basic than that. It's, the kind of roti kapda makan theory, and what we're basically trying to do is bring women to a level where they can start thinking, because these basic provisions are being provided.
Saida is one of those Asian women we can take comfort in. They have a mission in life, they care for the misery of others and are willing to make the effort to make a difference in society in two different lands. And so they should. After all, they now belong to both sides of the world.
I think people's perception of me depends upon their own prejudices and views. My own message is that I'm British. I'm a British person of the Muslim faith, of the Pakistani descent, and I'm very comfortable with that. I have no reasons to say that because I'm British I can't be Pakistani descent, because I'm Pakistani descent I can't be British or Muslim. All three things are part and parcel of me, and it's what makes me as a person.